you can hear it and smell it.
No, you couldn't feel it.
No, you didn't. You didn't feel it. Yeah. Hey everyone, welcome back to Notiers, Frontiers, Diaries. In the last episode, we very quickly crossed El Salvador and Honduras. And in this episode, we are going to, for the first time, explore Nicaragua, which turned out to be absolutely incredible. So we left the town of Choluteca in Honduras. We had only been in Honduras for one night.
Yeah.
So from Choluteca, we headed to the border with Nicaragua.
Yeah, the border was extremely hot, and it was a little bit complicated because you had to have like an official email that didn't welcome you, but just that like it had to go to the government to sign off on the fact that you were entering the country, and it was this whole loop-de-loop, hoop-de-hoo that some people could do ahead of time, but most people do at the border.
So Phil and Sapna, they had done it ahead of time, and it still took them forever to get through. But for us, we decided, we'll get it done at the border. And we were at the border for a good 5 hours.
In like insane, sweltering like heat.
It was hot. Now, they did have a roofed shelter area, but it wasn't like this border had walls or air conditioning or fans or things like that or facilities for us. So we just sat there and waited and waited and waited. And a part of me was concerned that, like, what happens if they said no?
Yeah.
If they just, we didn't get the email, or the email was rejected, or you've been rejected for whatever reason. Nicaragua.
I'm sure there would have just been a buck or two to be like, just let me in.
Yeah, but that's not something we want to do. And also, Nicaragua is a country that if you're going through Central America, you do have to go through it because it does have, it touches both the Pacific Ocean and the Atlantic Ocean.
And I do want to just take a quick break just to say, I know that getting into U.S. from other countries is a little bit more than an ordeal than an email and waiting 5 hours. So I don't want to sound like we're being, jaded, but... and I knew that crossing borders with a motorcycle or just all these borders all around the world was going to be bureaucratic, and it was going to be time consuming and sometimes frustrating. Yeah. And so we were prepared for that. But South America and Central America have proven to I have to sneeze. But the Americas were really easy compared to the little dibble-dabble we've done of Africa and what we assume to be in the rest of the world. There's no carnets. It's you show up, and if you gotta wait to get an email, God bless, but there's not like any difficulties. So
and Central America was, out of the two of Central America and South America, I would say Central America was the more difficult one. South America, the borders are a lot faster and simpler in a lot of ways. But still, in perspective, now that we have experience in Africa, this was a piece of cake.
Breeze. But in the moment, there was no breeze.
No.
It was hot, and it was
you know.
That's right.
But Phil and Stefan are just awesome people. They never abandoned us. They did the thing of what they should have done ahead of time to get them through, and Marissa and I were like, nah. They still hung around, you know, losing 5 pounds an hour just because of the sweat. But
yeah, they stayed with us. That was really nice.
Yeah.
But eventually they cleared us to go through. While we were waiting, they had all these brochures and posters about Nicaragua. And so we kind of got excited to look at all the different things that we might be able to do in Nicaragua. And a lot of it revolved around volcanoes. So I've tried to look up how many volcanoes are in Nicaragua.
At least a plethora.
A plethora. There's a plethora.
There's a lot.
You know, it depends on what you're counting. Some of them are really just kind of like mounds these days because they are dormant. Some counts are above 40, but I think one of the more official counts is 27. Still, that's a lot of volcanoes. So there's all sorts of things you can do around volcanoes, most of which involves looking at them.
Hiking, come on.
And experiencing. Well, yeah, of course. We were really excited to discover some volcanoes in Nicaragua. As our excitement grew, our worry that we weren't going to get in grew. But when they said, oh, no, you're fine, go on through, we happily got on the motorcycles and headed into Nicaragua. From the border, we went to a town called Esteli. Now it was already becoming dusk because the border had taken a lot longer than we had anticipated. So we really just needed to stay somewhere overnight before it got dark. And so we stayed in Esteli, which turned out to be a very nice, quaint town. From Esteli, we headed to the capital city of Nicaragua, which is called Managua.
Equally hot.
¿Cómo estás, mami? Te quería preguntar ¿cómo remix si estás pa' mí? ¿O estás para los demás? Mi amor, no pares, que te siempre quiero más. La luna te la bajaré con estrellas en el mar.
Like, just Nicaragua, like I thought like the closer to the equator we would get, the hotter it would be and be. I think throughout all of our travels, including Africa, like Nicaragua is the hottest place that we've slept and camped and indoors and outdoors. It's just, it was really, really, really hot.
So we were there at the end of February to March, which I've heard for Central America is one of the hotter seasons. I think some parts of Central America, it's just hot no matter what time of year it is. And they don't really have, you know, winter like in more temperate climates. But they'll have a rainier season and a wetter season, sometimes 2 rainy seasons in the year. It really all depends.
Mosquito season.
When we got to Managua, we were still traveling with Phil and Sapna, and they had heard about this volcano that's very close to the city of Managua. called Masaya. And in all of our travels, I think Masaya is one of my favorite places. Paved road went right to the crater's edge. I mean, that's incredible. Getting to a crater's edge of an active volcano is already quite difficult, but to have a road that you can take your motorcycle on to go right up to the crater's edge just blew my mind that they were able to do that. So you park and then you go over to the edge and you can just look down, and within this deep crater, you hear it.
Yeah, it was almost kind of like too steamy and smoky, and so you can see, like, taking pictures of it, there's no justice because it was just blocked. But you knew it was down there. You can hear the rumbling and tumbling of the lava, and obviously the tear-jerking sulfuric acid, that was just pouring out of it.
They had a trail that had gone along the crater's edge quite a ways, but they had blocked it off now.
It went to like a higher peak, so you can look down into it, but it was then blocked because the volcano was being more active as of late.
Yeah.
And it was, smogging people out. And
right.
If there was something, I mean, they have early detection systems all over the place, but if something were to have gone wrong, you don't want to be stuck up on,
Yeah, and I remember one of the people there had told us that there had been more trails before, but the volcano had a much larger eruption. Like, it's constantly erupting a little bit, but it had a much larger eruption like 5 years prior, and so a lot of those trails had just been completely destroyed by the eruption, and they had to close the place off for a while. But we were lucky enough to be able to go there and see down into it.
Yeah, so really cool little hot spot, if you will. There's this little lake in the middle of Nicaragua, and there's all these volcanoes that pop up in a choose your own adventure, and I saw one, and on Google Maps it looked like there's a mirador that we can ride to.
And a mirador is like a lookout.
A lookout point, yeah, into yet another crater lake, so not full of lava and bubbling madness, but of a lake, So
yeah, like a dormant volcano.
Yeah. And so I wanted just to take off in that direction, and I kind of plugged it into my Google Maps, even though, the back roads of Nicaragua aren't necessarily documented all that well. But I figured there's a big, huge volcano. Let's just zig and zag our way towards it, and we'll somehow, some way, get there. Down these back roads, and again, it's 1 billion degrees, Fahrenheit or Celsius, choose your own. It was just miserable, right? I'm trying to follow my Google little blue line on my phone, but it's not working that well. And every time we would pull over to ask for the directions of these people, sitting under the shade, just being like, get me out of the sun, you know, and they'd point further towards the volcano, you know, and we're like, well, okay, you know, but never did we get on whatever exact route Google
we were totally lost.
Yeah, but it was cool getting lost in the back dusty roads of Nicaragua. Finally, we came to a dead end at a gate that pretty much screamed like, do not pass, you know, and there's a little house, and, you know, we kind of made our presence known and honked, and some dude came out, and I said, how do we get up to the Mirador? And I said, like, there's a trail, you just walk, whatever, dude. And I was like, well, can I leave my bike here? Like, I don't know what's going on. You know, I was like, sure, whatever.
We didn't plan this out so well.
No, there was what I thought was going to be just like this volcano where you get to look into.
Yeah.
I thought there was going to be some kind of road up, and you glance down and you high five and you have water.
And there might have been. I mean, not to the
there
same paved extent as Masaya, but you look at Google now and you can see there is a mirador.
And you can see a deck. You can see a wooden deck when you zoom in. And
but we just didn't get there.
It's just my poor navigation skills that had continued from that day on as well. But, so we just decided to hike. So we took off the majority of our clothes, and we did keep our motorcycle boots on,
and I had my motorcycle pants on over my other pair of pants. It's too hot.
It was insane. I mean, it was 5 minutes before I was like, oh, this is probably a bad decision to wear my motorcycle boots. And like a blister had already formed on my left heel, and like
it's like straight up.
It's straight up, and there's no like trees and shade. So every once in a while there'd be like a little bush, and like I would just try to crawl underneath it just to get out of the direct sun and catch my breath, and Marisa would be, you know,
I was so worried.
5 minutes behind me, just
I mean, like, we carried our water bottles, which was smart, but you know, it's heavy.
Well, they were empty within.
Yeah, and then they were empty, and I remember thinking, okay, this is the end of my water, and I'm not even like up to the top of the crater yet. And I was just sweating so much and so hot. At one point in time, I'm like, this is a really bad idea if I were to continue. So it's just a tiny little trail. I just laid down in the middle of the trail and just laid there. And Tim was way ahead, and I'm like, well, when he comes down, he'll find me either alive or dead, but this is where I'm gonna lay. And I did lay there for a while and started to feel better, like I could breathe and, you know, get my senses again, and got back up, and I was like, all right, I can make it to the top of this crater, and we did.
We did. It was beautiful.
It was amazing.
It sucked getting up there in motorcycle boots on a really hot day. Like we've already complained the last time we climbed some weird, you know, ruins in Mexico, and full all the gear all the time is not appropriate for.
We told ourselves that.
But yeah, once we got up there, you know, it was a little tricky because the trail was not the main trail by any means, and so we kind of had to, you know, bust our way through some trees and stuff. But
it was very overgrown.
Yeah, it was so beautiful. Then, I mean, like, there wasn't like a burst of colors, but it was just like some really nice, you know, like
I know it's
straw grasses with green bushes, with the blue of the lake, with like the, you know, the mountain gray and then the blue sky. It was just really, it was just like in some movie when you get to the top of a hill and look down and you're like, oh, the promised land, you know.
That's it. You know, you'd think, oh, you're in a volcano. This is, even though it's an old volcano, it's kind of like this dead area, right? But of course now everything had kind of come alive in there. And because it was inside of this crater, it had been protected from human development for who knows how long. And so it really felt like primordial. It felt like, all right, I'm in this, this ancient prehistoric crater that hasn't been touched since whatever time it had exploded. It's completely natural now, and had just been taken over by nature, and this beautiful lake. I mean, I could just imagine myself in a nice cool house.
Oh man. So we did not climb our little happy butts all the way down to the actual water, because that wasn't gonna happen. But oh my god, if this was like primitive caveman Tim and Marisa way back, how many ever,
I would live there.
I would live there, and I would have climbed down by that little lake, and I would have,
just stayed there.
I don't know what I would have eaten. There's probably no fish in there, but I would.
Probably not. No.
We'd figure out a way to live. But
yeah, it was idyllic.
It was idyllic. I was gonna say that. Then you said it, and then I was like, oh, I can't repeat idyllic.
So our time in Nicaragua was already getting off to a great start.
Yeah.
We had plenty more volcanoes to explore and visit.
This is true.
And in our next episode, we take a journey to another town in Nicaragua, which is close to a lot of that volcanic activity. It's called León. And we have all sorts of adventures there. Yeah. So stay tuned. I hope you liked this episode. If you did, please give us a thumbs up and hit the subscribe button below. Ding, ding. And we'll be seeing you next time.
Peace, everybody.
Bye.
Stay safe.